Okay, welcome everyone. Grab your beverage of choice and maybe keep the antacids within reach because we need to talk about the election platform nonsense. I'm Nick, your host.
I'm Rio.
And I'm German.
And yes, it is nonsense. Not because policy doesn't matter, but because apparently nobody got the memo that elections aren't supposed to be a surprise party. Let me tell you why that's bullshit. The Liberals dropped their platform on Easter weekend, the sacred time when Canadians are traditionally reading 65 pages of policy PDFs over chocolate bunnies and awkward brunches with their in-laws. And the Conservatives held out even longer, waiting until Wednesday, April 26th, aka the literal last possible moment to publish theirs. Not a soft launch, not a leak, just surprise, here's our entire vision for the country. Hope you can read fast. Seriously, how are we supposed to engage meaningfully with platforms they clearly didn't want us to read? This isn't a group project, it's a national election. And treating voters like we're the kid you remember after the PowerPoint's already been emailed to the teacher, that's not leadership, that's disrespect. So in this episode, we're going to break it all down. Not just what they're saying, but what they're hiding, who they're blaming, and why some of this reads like fanfic. You're going to hear the vibes and voices straight from the source. We've got conservative promises to lock up criminals and cut red tape like it's 1995, and Jean Chrétien just got a modem. Liberal manifestos about sovereignty and shadows, and bold decorations like if America won't lead, Canada will. Okay, Carney, calm down. We're still using fax machines in some government offices. So let's dive in.
We have some very strong opinions and ideas, and I think we'll probably state those opinions now.
Thanks for giving us Polyev. Defense, we won't spend too much time here because we kind of covered it in the intro. I guess the biggest thing is both parties want to raise NATO defense to 2%. Thinking about it, one of the things I guess I wanted to ask is, what are your thoughts on, does NATO even still exist? Like, is the argument we need to raise NATO spending to 2% to appease Trump? Or is the argument, holy shit, Trump's insane, so we have a crazy person to the south of us? Russia and China are able to invade our Northwest Passage and Arctic space because of the melting ice, and they are getting really bold about it. So is this really like a NATO thing? Because there's been lots of chatter in the US about how like NATO's basically dead at this point. Trump, like, if Russia invaded one of the little NATO countries near them, do you think Trump would actually intervene?
No.
He would not meet his NATO requirements in any capacity. He'd be like, well, sucks to be you. Guess you're going to be part of Russia. A lot of you are going to die. So yeah, like, what are your thoughts on this? Like, do we just call it like it is at this point?
I mean, okay, so my opinion, so NATO still, the rest of NATO still exists.
Yeah,
right?
but without
And,
the
like,
US, like,
I know, but without
on.
you're right, without the US though, like there's really not much we can do, right? And I was actually, this is a weird conversation I had in my family, but we were having I was talking with a cousin of mine and an uncle, and then we just somehow got on the topic of like geopolitics. And then I was like, well, if you think about it, like the United States has the largest nuclear arsenal, followed by Russia and China, right? You know, several thousand nukes for the United States, several thousand for Russia, a few hundred for China. And then you look at the rest of the like global nuclear arsenals, and like most of them top out at like maybe 50. Like that's being, and even that's being pretty generous. I'm pretty sure like the UK only has like something like, no, like I want to say like 55, 47, something in that neighborhood.
I mean, does it take more than 2?
Well, that's the thing, right? And like, so, and then I remember explaining to them too, because they're like, well, no one's going to risk nuclear war. I'm like, well, the thing is, like, no one's going to risk nuclear war, but conventional war is still a thing, right? Like, look at Ukraine. It very quickly devolved into trench warfare and artillery. Like, it's World War One. Like, it's World War One tactics, right? In an era of like drones and missiles, which is
although it's turned into a drone war.
Yeah, which is frankly a lot more terrifying, where like you can just have an FPV drone like fly beside you and blow your head off, right? So like, you know, reaching the 2% NATO defense target is, you know, great start. And I've said this before in the podcast, especially in like our Arctic sovereignty one, of like, we need to actually evaluate that number being higher than 2%. And like, we need to evaluate the possibility of actually expanding the Canadian military to do a lot more than just what it currently does with its 70,000 active service members and like 150,000 reserve. Like, how are you supposed to defend the second largest landmass in the world with only a 250,000 people and like, a bunch of really outdated equipment? So like,
well, and it's worth saying that both parties want to expand equipment and expand recruitment and pay military personnel more, but that's all a product of, again, holy shit, Russia and China and Trump's crazy.
Yep.
It's not a NATO thing. Like, they're saying we have to meet our NATO targets, but I guess again, this is like me splitting hairs. I just find it frustrating that our leaders can't just say, like, we're in a bad situation here.
Yeah.
The US has lost its mind.
Yeah. And actually, I had another thought too, because last year my girlfriend and I went to Australia, and like, it was very strange.
Jealous of you.
Yeah, great trip, but it's a very strange experience to kind of like walk around and say, I'll pick on Sydney as a very easy example because we spent a few more days there. You would see posters being like, join the reserves, join the Navy, join the Army, da 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 da. You'd see that a lot more often. And even we were walking through, I don't remember where it was, but it was near the Opera House. And then it was just randomly, we just saw a military ceremony. And like, we stopped and I was like, can we just stop and watch this for a second? I'm kind of curious as to what's going on. And like, it was just like a commemoration of like, with these soldiers died doing da 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 on these dates, we're here to remember them. It was one of those things that you don't see that often in Canada, right? Like, I see that every year on Remembrance Day. That's it. I never see it anywhere else.
Yeah.
And like, that also says a lot about the national pride in Australia too, right? So like, I feel like we should be doing more of that kind of stuff where it's like, no, you have to put it in people's face. Like, no, this is an option. And another side note that I think is also really funny, I had a conversation with another friend of mine a few weeks ago. And we were in this car and we were talking about like, yeah, you know what? There's a little bit like a few years ago, I didn't know what to do with my life. So I definitely had the thought of joining the Army. And I was like, hey, buddy, same. Like, I didn't know what I was going to do after school. Like, I wasn't being offered any jobs or anything. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I can join the Army.
There's been a lot of conversation on US podcasts specifically about that. The Bulwark has had several military, like Gen Z military members on, talking about how like they're doing it because they have no other option. And specifically, it's not in the US, it's not just about money, it's also about healthcare, because military service members get really good health coverage for them and their family members, right? So I remember specifically there was one Gen Zer that was talking about how they like basically felt trapped in the military because they just weren't economically in a position not to be, which is like also kind of horrifying when you think about it.
But when you look at the defense and things like that, like Trump is just crazy anyway. So like, bluntly saying, and so like even like Trump says we should increase spending to whatever, but knowing Trump, he may take himself out of NATO too. So like without
himself out of NATO already, it's just not on paper.
And that's the problem, right? Like Trump is so how do you like irrational and so unpredictable right now. So even if we have this NATO thing and whatnot, Trump may say you need to up it even further, right? So, or even leave NATO, like he's technically leaving NATO. So,
which I guess is why I just want them to be like, and I was surprised the Liberal platform didn't just flat out say like, the US is like basically torn up NATO. It's not a thing anymore. We need to build up our military to defend our sovereignty, given how much they use the word sovereignty in that whole document, never mind that section. And they did say like to protect our sovereignty, but they kept bringing it back to NATO. And I was like, I don't understand why any of you people can't just say, because we're not dumb. You can see it. I can see it. My husband can see it. Neighbors can see it. My niece can see it. That there's a problem and NATO doesn't exist anymore. So I guess that was just something that frustrated me in both documents.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. It's also, you have to realize that a lot of times these, like anything related to the UN right now is under question right now anyway. And its
Yeah.
legitimacy is kind of really focusing on now whether it actually has any power to do anything, because it's just countries together, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's another discussion, not for tonight or today, but that's another question to ask, is like, are these institutions like UN and NATO really able to do anything? They can't even control the war in Ukraine and Russia and places like that. How are they
Yeah.
going to control? How is countries going to come together, right, and really support each other? Like, it looks like they can't even agree
They
on.
also, if you notice, haven't said jack shit about Trump shipping people off to gulags.
And I know, like, they have no, like, honestly, like, you think about it, like, yeah, they're great in theory, but it takes everyone to really
Well, they
work
rely
together.
again. It goes back to the norms thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Norms
And
actually
not
and
every country
tradition.
will agree. And like a lot of times you have to have 100% or majority of people, member countries, supporting it and going for it. Otherwise, it doesn't even go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to tie that into, Nick, of like, really the UN is a norms-based and norms creating kind of organization. Like, international law is technically a thing in the sense that like treaties exist.
Janky at best.
Yeah, but it's really easy to throw a treaty out, just be like, well, that doesn't exist anymore, because just look what Russia did to Ukraine, right? Like, they agreed to never invade, and then here we are 30 years later, they invaded Ukraine, right? So like, it's very easy to just kind of like throw international law out, and it's also, but at the same time, it's also very easy to just be like, no, international law says we can't do da 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 da. It's like, well, what's stopping you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, right? International law is tough, right? And like I said, I'm not here to debate international law today. It's just a long conversation that could be down the road, right? And
Yeah.
like, honestly, I wish UN was a lot more decision-making power, but again, it doesn't run its own government, right?
Yeah.
Fun times.
I know. I used to have a big thing for United Nations, but after seeing the power it has absolutely no power at all.
Um,
After visiting New York, full disclosure.
speaking